Hey, it's time for TV Skywriter. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to TV Skywriter. I'm Pat Murray, your host. I publish the Durham Skywriter, that's Durham, North Carolina's online community paper. But today we're doing TV Skywriter. And that's where I introduce you to people that I think you should know. In this particular show, if you're from North Carolina, this is for you. Okay, so today, Mike Meno is here. He's the communications director of the ACLU, that's American Civil Liberties Union, here in North Carolina, because there's, 50 offices completely across the country?
We actually have more than that. So the American Civil Liberties Union has state offices in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. So awesome. We have folks, we're one of the only nationwide civil rights organizations that has people in every state lobbying in every legislature, trying to work in communities all over the country to protect people's civil rights and liberties.
Awesome. And I'm going to just read a little definition, even though you just told us what you do. But I'm going to read this because people need to hear this wording, that it's nonpartisan, nonprofit. You defend and preserve the individual rights and liberties guaranteed to every person. And I notice it's person, not citizen, so it's really interesting. I like that. In this country, by the Constitution and laws of the United States. And I'm guessing that you're saying person and not citizen for a reason. And what is that reason?
Well, the simple reason is that the U.S. Constitution protects everybody who's in this country. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen, a non-citizen, an immigrant. People who are incarcerated still have rights. And that's the great thing about the Constitution, is it protects everybody. So like you said, we're nonpartisan, so we don't endorse or oppose candidates for elected office. We're nonprofit. We don't accept any government money. And what we're really about is preserving those rights that are guaranteed to not just every American, but every person here. So things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, equal protection under the law, due process. And so with that, we all together work on something like 300 different issues. And here in North Carolina, we've been very involved in voting rights and LGBTQ equality, in a lot of criminal justice reform and police accountability work that I know we're going to talk about later, reproductive rights. So I could literally just keep listing issues that the ACLU is working on in North Carolina and across the country.
Well, it's really fascinating. And I hope we can talk about as many issues as possible within this half hour or so. But let's start out. Now, I called you initially because I don't know how new this app is. It's kind of new to me. But there's an app, NC Justice, if you can see my smartphone, that one right there. Let me open it up just to show you what it looks like. This is an interesting app. It allows you, now we're talking about police actions. Now, I was going to say citizens or people of the United States are within our rights. You can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting the law here. But we can tape the police when they're in our communities and we want to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess there's problems ensue. I guess we need to also remember, I'm speaking as a journalist, okay,
sure.
But we also have to make sure we're not in the way. Sometimes we get up in their face, and when they tell us to move back, we probably should, but we are within our rights to tape them or to record them. And tell us about, if you're familiar with this, enough with this app to discuss it, could you explain how the app works? Because I think it's really, really hip.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for asking about it. So it's called the Mobile Justice app. And North Carolina was one of the first state ACLUs to roll this out. And our goal is to have it in every state across the country. There's been so many instances of police violence in the news lately. And I think most of us know that it's not because this is a new phenomenon, but a lot of the reason why it's been in the news is because more and more people are walking around with smartphones in their pocket.
Right.
And when they believe an officer is violating someone's rights, they have the right, like you said, to take out their phone and record police. And the ability to document those instances, so it's not just he said, she said, really is a tool to hold officers accountable if they're doing something wrong. But then there's the question of, what do I do with this footage? And we at the ACLU, we have lawyers all across the country who work on police accountability and other civil rights issues. So the idea behind mobile justice was we wanted to make it easier for people who recorded footage where they thought a police officer was violating someone's rights to share that with us at the ACLU. So when you use the mobile justice app, and you can, if you have an iPhone or an Android, it's a free app. It's available in English and Spanish. People in North Carolina, if you go to the Google Plus store or the Apple iPhone store, you just type in Mobile Justice NC and it should come up. And when people record a video, it saves a copy to their phone like it would normally. But what it also does is it sends a copy, it transmits a copy to us at the ACLU so we can have our legal staff review it to see if there's anything we need to follow up on. And, you know, one of the reasons that's so important is because a lot of times people's phones will get damaged. They might get confiscated. You know, there have been lots of incidents where police officers will literally take people's phone, even if they don't have a right to do that. So even if your phone is damaged or taken, we will still receive a copy of that video. And then if you're able to, a survey pops up that asks you just a series of questions to help us better understand what's going on. So I would encourage people who are interested to download that app, take a look at it. And even if you don't think it's something that you're going to, you know, need to use, you never know when you might witness something that should be documented and that you might want to share with an organization like the ACLU.
Wow. So if you're filming something with your, and excuse if I use archaic language, I'm 61, sure. But if you're filming something and sending it automatically to the ACLU NC office, do you get to see it live? Is there an alert at your office saying, hey, look at this footage?
There's not. So what happens is it goes to a secure server, and then we will go in regularly and look at the videos that have been uploaded. So, you know, what we always say is if somebody has sent us something that they think is urgent and we should look at, they can call us, they can email us. Our website, acluofnorthcarolina.org, has more information about the app if you want to read more about it. And, you know, one of the ways that it's been useful is to have that conversation we were just having a minute ago to remind people you have a right to film police. Right. And that is something that officers don't always respect. There was an incident not too long ago in Wilmington, North Carolina, where an Uber driver was driving a customer in the back seat, and he got pulled over by police. And the police were actually following his passenger and wanted to search his passenger. And now this Uber driver takes out his phone and he starts filming. And a Wilmington police officer told the Uber driver, put that away, you don't have a right to record police. And what the officer did not know is that Uber driver was also an attorney who was aware of his rights and kept filming, and then later shared that video with the news. And we've actually been in touch with him about that because, you know, for every incident like that happens where somebody knows their rights, is able to assert them. I mean, think of how many times that happens when the person who's being told that is not an attorney, might not know the law. So, you know, if there's one thing that people watching this take away, it's that you absolutely have a right to film police. Pat, like you said before, you know, we want everybody to be safe and we want everybody to be respectful. So if you're filming something and an officer asks you to step back, do so. You know, if you are the person who is perhaps being detained or arrested, it's important, if there are other people around, for them to sort of take over that job of recording. And we tell people, you know, generally follow an officer's instructions. It's always better to argue something in court later than to put yourself in danger. But even if you don't have the mobile justice app, if you have a smartphone, if you have a camera, you absolutely have a right to film police. And, you know, if you think of some of these really horrific shootings that we've seen across the country, you know, Alton Sterling's death is something that we know what happened because it was captured on video. And if you think of that compared to Michael Brown and Ferguson, where there's, you know, one story that says this and all these other stories that say that, and there's still disagreements among some parties. Think about if we had video evidence of that encounter with Michael Brown and Ferguson. And, you know, a related issue that the ACLU works on is making sure that body camera footage, more and more police officers in North Carolina are wearing body cameras that are filming the public. And for us, this serves the same purpose. It's an accountability thing. So one of the things we've worked on a lot in North Carolina is making sure that police departments have good policies that are going to allow the public to have access to that footage. So it's something that is used to hold them accountable and not just when it's convenient for police. But that's actually been complicated by some recent state laws. So that's one of the things that we're trying to fix right here in North Carolina.
Yeah, because I thought that, didn't they pass a law saying that the public does not have access to that footage, body cam footage by the police, right?
There was a law passed last year that severely limited the public's ability to get that footage. And you might remember that law was hugely controversial around the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott in Charlotte, when people were saying, release these tapes before this law goes into effect. There are still ways to get the footage, but it mostly involves having to go to court. And you and I know that that's something that most North Carolinians just don't have the time or money to do. So if anyone out there is interested in this issue and wants to you know, get involved, we're encouraging the state legislature, the General Assembly, to fix that law. It's House Bill 972 from last year. And you can read on our website about some of our suggested changes to that law to make sure it actually provides public access to that footage.
Okay. Is it too late to ask questions about how the police will use, or rather implement, these body cams? Because I had a long laundry list of questions. Of course, I'm just one person. Nobody paid any attention. But I was wondering, for example, when are they required to turn on the body cams? In other words, when things escalate, or you know what I mean? At one point. Right.
It's an excellent question, because you don't want officers to have that ability to really censor themselves, right? To stop and start recording.
Editing.
So this is one of the things we do at the ACLU is we have attorneys who will go and recommend policies to local police departments. And you know, our biggest ally here is the community. So when Durham decided that they wanted to pursue getting body cameras, there was a very robust public dialogue where members of the city council were talking about what their policy should look like. And that's what you just said, Pat, is absolutely at the top of the list. It's how are officers going to control that footage? How is it going to be accessible to the public? You know, how is that footage going to be stored? There's a whole list of questions that come up, and it can get very complicated. And so that's one of the reasons why the ACLU is primarily a legal organization, because you know, while we are a community-based organization, the attorneys who I get to work with, I'm not a lawyer myself, but the attorneys who I get to work with, they get to do the fun stuff of going through these policies line by line and saying, you know, this should be better, this needs to go away. And it's hard when you have to lobby each individual police department.
Right. I'd like to, if you don't mind, talk about immigration policies.
Absolutely.
Because what I'm concerned and a little confused about, I'm reading that this anti-immigrant bill, SB 145.
Yes.
Explain how this works. I was reading that they want the UNC institutions, that includes, of course, UNC Chapel Hill, on request to disclose the immigration status of their students. And if they don't do so, to their, I guess, to their, I don't know, if they don't get the information they want, supposedly.
Right.
They want to defund all of the entire UNC system if they don't agree to these policies of disclosing immigration status of students on request. Can you explain that? It sounds so weird to me.
And I will try, because it's a very complicated bill, but it is, so it's Senate Bill 145, and this is something else that we're fighting right now in the legislature. So this is a bill that has already passed the state Senate and is going to go over to the state House for their consideration. And it is the latest and sort of most sprawling anti-immigrant bill that we've seen here in North Carolina. And, you know, as I'm sure your viewers know, this is a very scary time for immigration policy in the United States, because a lot of local officials have felt emboldened by the Trump administration and the federal government taking such a hard stance against immigrants in the United States. And so what Senate Bill 145 would do is it would try to punish local governments and the University of North Carolina system if they in any way limit their role in immigration enforcement. So right now there's a federal law called FERPA. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And what that does is it says, you know, students have privacy rights and the school just can't hand over information about students regardless of who they are. But what Senate Bill 145 would do, it would actually make the UNC system answer questions about the immigration status of students to law enforcement. And it could potentially violate that law and put students in danger. You know, there are many immigrants, documented and undocumented, in North Carolina.
Sure.
And we're talking about people who go to school, who work, who contribute to our communities in a lot of ways. And what a bill like this does is it really tries to target and single out those community members. And in doing so, you know, this is not just going to violate the rights of immigrants, but it can violate the rights of U.S. citizens. And I'll give you one example. Something else that this law would do is it would require the State Department of Public Safety to turn highway patrol officers, who are law enforcement officers working all over the state, into basically federal immigration officers.
I read that was unconstitutional, though.
Well, and I think and you know, I think that's something that we could see challenged in court along other parts of this law, because unfortunately, a law being unconstitutional is not enough to stop our legislature from passing it. And we've seen over recent years so many unconstitutional laws that restrict voting, that restrict abortion access, that restrict rights for LGBT people, that have targeted populations of color. We've seen these laws time and again get overturned in the courts because they violate the Constitution, just like you said. So, you know, if people want to read about this law, they can go again to ACLU of North Carolina.org. But really what it is it's trying to send a message that immigrants aren't welcome in North Carolina. And I know myself and a lot of other North Carolinians would disagree with that. And we believe that immigrants contribute to our community and that we shouldn't have laws that try to target and single out people by punishing local governments that say, you know, we don't want to make it a priority to track down and arrest undocumented people, or for UNC to say, hey, we just want to protect the privacy of our students.
Yeah, what really kills me about this, now I'm from Chicago,
Okay.
and so I know that this is aimed at people of color, Muslims, at least the brown ones, and Hispanics, at least the darker ones. Now, I had an office mate who was Polish and Yugoslavian.
Okay.
And he was kind of laughing when he told me this. It wasn't really funny, but he said, yeah, he says, when the anti-immigrant fervor bubbles up every now and then in Chicago, he says his Polish community, they're like, you know, nothing to see here. You know, they're like they lay real low, because he told me, I don't know if this is true, but at the time that he told me, he said that there are as many undocumented Polish people as Hispanic people, at least in Chicago. But of course, the Polish people don't get stopped because they're still European, they're still white.
Well, and when you think about giving law enforcement these powers, what is that going to do? It's going to lead to racial profiling.
Exactly.
Just like, you know, so certain people are going to be targeted. So whether, you know, how can you see someone walking down the street and know whether they're a citizen or not? Right?
No way.
We are a diverse country. People of all colors live here. People of all colors are citizens here. And that's the scary thing about these types of laws, and especially, I think folks feeling emboldened by the Trump administration right now, it's that this is going to lead to racial profiling. We've already seen that in too many communities in North Carolina when they're trying to, quote unquote, enforce immigration policy. What that turns into are traffic checkpoints where brown drivers are pulled over and white ones are told to go through, or people are stopped on the street. And that's not the kind of state or the kind of country that I think anyone really wants to live in. We want a place where everyone's rights are respected.
Exactly. Now, usually, we usually hear about the ACLU in the news. Are we as residents of North Carolina, are we able to or encouraged to get in contact with you if we have issues or if we notice things happening? Or because we hear about the high profile cases,
right,
and the ACLU steps in. But at what point do we as residents approach you with things that we have observed?
I'm so glad you asked that. So if there's anyone out there who thinks that their constitutional rights, their civil rights are being violated by the government, and that could be a local official, it could be a police department, it could be a school system, we want to hear from you. So you can go on our website, acluofnorthcarolina.org, or you can send us a letter through the mail, and we look at every request for legal help that we get. And then our legal department will talk to the people, ask questions, and figure out if there's a role for us to play. We not only are a legal organization, but we're also, like I said, an advocacy and lobbying organization. So sometimes all it takes is someone from our office to call up a local official or to send a letter, or to help organize communities in opposition to different attacks on our rights. So if folks want to get legal assistance, you can absolutely contact our office. And if you want to learn more about the organization and just how to get involved generally, a week from tonight, actually, next week on Sunday, May 21st, we're having our annual statewide membership meeting. We're a membership organization. We have more members across North Carolina, but this meeting is open to all members of the public. It's going to be in downtown Raleigh at Marbles Kids Museum. And it's going to be an opportunity for really just a community open house. I'm going to be there along with the rest of our staff. And if people want to come pick up some literature, sign up for our emails, ask the staff about the work that we're doing, it's going to be a great opportunity. So it's going to be at 2:00 at Marbles Kids Museum in Raleigh on Sunday, May 21st, if anyone's interested in joining us.
Awesome. I'll actually put that on the legal page of the Durham Skywriter, durhamskywriter.com. And I'll also find parking information, because not all of us who go to Raleigh can remember the parking situation. I think there's a park across the street from the Marbles.
There is. If folks know where Moore Square is, it's right across the street from there. And there are some parking garages and on-street parking available.
Right. That's a good location to have a meeting. I'm surprised. Okay, that's good. That's good.
We're excited.
So what other issues would you like to discuss? Because I have a long list of them.
Sure.
I'm interested in the death penalty. I'm interested in mass incarceration. What do you want to talk about next? And I want to respect your time. So let's talk about one more issue.
Okay. Well, if you're interested in mass incarceration, let's talk about mass incarceration.
Okay.
So can I tell you about a specific project that we're working on related to that?
Yes, please.
So we actually, in the last 6 months, hired an attorney in our office to work specifically on the issue of debtors' prisons, which a lot of people might hear debtors' prisons and think, do we still have that? Isn't that like in the 1800s when you would lock up
like Charles Dickens days.
Exactly. It sounds like Charles Dickens. And what a lot of people don't realize is today we have essentially modern day debtors' prisons in the form of what are called criminal fines and fees. And so this is, if you go to court, you might get sentenced a fine for something you've done, or if you've been incarcerated, you might serve all your time. But on top of that, in North Carolina and too many other states, you can also be charged a range of fees, anything from attorney's fees to drug testing, to electronic monitoring, to paying for your own parole. And what this does is it creates a sort of snowball effect where people who get caught up in the criminal justice system, even for something like a misdemeanor, some low-level offense, say you get a speeding ticket and you don't pay it off in time, all of a sudden these fines can snowball, and it affects way too many people in North Carolina. So we've hired an attorney to look into this problem because we want to look into ways where people aren't trapped in our criminal justice system because they can't afford to pay these fines. In
That's
North Carolina,
great. I'm so glad you're doing that.
In North Carolina, about 80 to 90% of defendants are what we call indigent, meaning you're low income, you can't afford an attorney. And we have a system that is trying to make money off of poor people going through the court system. So, you know, this is a big issue for us at the ACLU right now is looking at how can we combat these fees and how can we make sure that when people have paid their debt to society, when they've done community service, served time in prison perhaps, that they don't come out and have to all of a sudden get up under a mountain of debt to have basic rights restored, like your right to vote.
Right. I'm so glad. I want to hear more about that. I wrote an article a couple of years ago where I interviewed a gentleman who was in law enforcement, and he explained until the system changes its focus from being fee-based and relying on the money that comes in, things will never change. He told me how you can, okay, suppose there's a DUI. Okay,
right.
Get arrested. He says that they force you to take a class that is spread out so far that there's no way that a person can keep their job who has to attend those classes. He said that they could easily do it in 2 days, like a couple of afternoons, but he says they spread it out in such a way that you have to lose your job. You just have to, unless you're self-employed.
Or if you have to take care of
or you're rich or something.
Yeah.
And he says it's almost by design that they spread out these courses to ridiculous lengths. And then he says, if you're looking for, he says, even if you're, I don't want to misquote him. He said, if you are accused of a crime, not convicted. He says, if you're accused of a crime, you can lose your apartment. And everyone who, he said, people are surprised what can happen if they are doing, if they're looking for information on you and you've been accused of a crime. Even your family and friends can somehow lose their apartments as well, depending on their relationship with you. He says it's a really dirty system. He's in law enforcement himself, but he was bold enough to tell me these things.
No, it's true. We've really ended up with this two-tier justice system where people who have money are treated one way, and then in too many instances, people who don't have money will stay imprisoned because they can't afford to pay off all this debt that just snowballs. I mean, if folks do want to learn more about that issue, we actually, on our Facebook page right now, if you go to the ACLU of North Carolina's Facebook page, we have a conversation with Christina Becker, who's the attorney in our office who's doing this work, and she talks a little bit more about her role at the ACLU and what her project's going to be like.
That is awesome. I cannot wait to, I will check out your Facebook page and definitely check that out.
Great.
And I want to respect your time, but would you mind coming back another time to talk about other issues?
I would love to come back. And, you know, like I said, there's no shortage of work we're doing at the ACLU. We could talk about 4 or 5 different issues next time. I'd love to do that.
Awesome. So Mr. Mike Meno, thank you so much. He's from the ACLU North Carolina office, which is in Raleigh, right?
Yep. We work across the state, but our office is based in Raleigh.
Awesome. So go to ACLU, ACLU of North Carolina.org for information.
You got it.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I will be calling you for future, I want to interview you for future articles because I do have a legal page in the Durham Skywriter. And also I'd like to have you come back on TV Skywriter.
That sounds great. Thanks so much, Pat. It's been really fun.
Absolutely. Okay, folks. So I hope you enjoyed that show. Be sure to Read the Durham Skywriter, this Durham, North Carolina's online community paper, for further information on Durham and environs. So if you want to be a guest, let me know. Just contact me on Twitter. It's the quickest way, at Durham Skywriter, or just write to me, durhamskywriter@yahoo or gmail.com. With that, have a beautiful evening. It's springtime. The weather's beautiful, and I'll be back next Sunday. Ciao for now. See you later.